Okay, hello everybody. I'm really happy to see so many faces in here and many faces I know. So I hope it will be interesting also for those who know me for very long. With Elias, when we were setting the theme of this keynote, we were thinking actually about combining these topics together. So giving some entire insights into the community of software architecture and software architects. To also kind of like bridge this understanding of what these software architects are actually doing and what we do in research. But as well connecting it to the topic that is very dear to my heart, and that is increasing diversity within software engineering community as well as software architecture community. The title of the talk is actually coming from my conversation with Ivar Jakobsen, where he has a small son at the moment, and he's so giving talks to children in schools. And he was telling me that one of the things that is like resonates very strongly with him is why the wrong people choose software engineering and the right people do not. And so the title of my talk comes from the inspiration from talking to Ivar. As for myself, I think Elias introduced me very well already. So you know that I'm like coming from these three directions, which is academia and teaching and running different academic activities from the point of view of research, and also having some outreach towards high school children. Then my research goes in the direction of software architecture, and specifically the International Conference on Software Architecture, the ICSA community. And besides, I have co-founded an organization that is trying to engage and empower more girls in computing. We are reaching also to teachers and children, parents, etc. So we will talk about all these themes a little. To start with just a little bit of background, because I think like everybody's a little biased given their background. It's good to actually say upfront what my background is. So I work at this university, Masaryk University in the Czech Republic. Now, what is nice about the university is that it's pretty progressive. So it was the first university in the Czech Republic that started an independent faculty of computer science in 1994. And quite recently, we also started Czech Cybercrime Center of Excellence in trying to build excellence in cybersecurity and cybercrime. And what is, I think, like relevant to this talk is that in that center, we actually merge people of different competencies and disciplines together, bring them to one table, so that people who have the legislation background with people who have psychological background, or with people who have computing background just come together and try to agree about strategies in securing critical infrastructures around us. We actually are pretty successful with this initiative. So at the moment, we are being recognized as the major hub of cybersecurity in the Czech Republic. It resides actually directly at my faculty with this cybersecurity innovation hub and the National Cybersecurity Competence Center. We're talking also to policymakers in the field, as well as regional chamber of commerce, and starting some startups and spin-offs in terms of cybersecurity. I'm describing this context because we have really many people on board. This all started with actually the idea of education, so educating people in cybersecurity. So that's why you see here this like cyber range, which is a place where we do training, this capture the flag training of people trying to break into an infrastructure like a nuclear power plant, for example, and having rescue teams trying to protect the cybersecurity levels of the nuclear power plant. So that's one thing we do as well, and we talk to people who are experts in education as well. I will be talking about software architecture, so I was thinking it's actually a good opportunity to tell you a little bit about what kind of like evolution we've done in understanding what is software architecture, because what I see from around myself, it's still many people in the industry have a different picture than others. So let's just take a look at that. So this is like typically how we imagine architecture, right? So it's a blueprint, it's a structure of something that is complex enough that it deserves to be documented and described. actually, we started from that picture in the 80s, 90s, and we were trying to learn from the construction engineers to describe the construction of the systems that we want to build. So it's a design time effort. Funnily enough, actually, we are still 2D. So construction engineers are 3D, but we are still 2D. I think it would be actually quite interesting to visualize architectures in 3D or even virtual reality to really like be able to grasp the complexity of software systems nowadays. We actually learned pretty soon that software architecture resembles much more a city plan than a separate building, because we do not architect systems to be standalone applications. We architect ecosystems of systems that are integrated and cooperate together. And in that respect, like the analogy works quite well, and we will get to that later. So the important part about it will be that what is important when you think about design of a city, and you could build a city, then the primary thing would be like, how do I want to optimize the quality of living in that city, right? So that's how you build a city. So you know that people need to move from one place to another in reasonable time. You know that they need to have access to some shared resources, like, for example, hospitals or schools. Sometimes it's actually good to build one big hospital with all the great experts in it, but sometimes it's better to have smaller hospitals that are easier to reach. And that's actually the kinds of decisions we do when we architect systems. Yet we are in 2D, so we have this different blueprints, and that's typically what you see. So you see different blueprints of the systems. But what is very important, and what we learned around 2000, is that although software architecture is like visible everywhere, software architecture is not that actual blueprint. Software architecture is actually just documented by the blueprint, but it's something different. So when we look at what that is in the end, then it's rather the set of significant design decisions that shape the software structure, rather than the software structure itself. And we learned that around 2000, when we started to look around the key decisions that people can agree that form and shape what the system, what should be the stable elements within the software system. So quite nice. The definitions are on this slide. So one is from Bara Buhnova, one of the legends in software engineering, who is saying that architecture is the set of significant design decisions that shape a software system, where significant can be measured by cost of change. So it's those things that you would actually like to get done early during the design process. Martin Fowler, in his keynote in 2015, was actually saying that these are the things we wish for, we've done early. Sometimes, you know, like it's not that we really manage to have them done early. He's also mentioning one important point, and that is that when you come to a software development company, they often do not have their architecture documented, so they do not have that blueprint. But when you put like their biggest software developer experts to one table, and you distill the like essential shared understanding of that system and its design, actually the thing that you get as an end result is that software architecture. So it's actually those principles that drive the future design decisions, and it's this like stable principles you build upon. Actually, similarly to values in a company culture, for example, right? It's that thing that just helps you to decide whether certain design decisions is still like compliant with the architectural vision or not anymore. So what we do a lot in software architecture is that we talk about quality criteria. For us, quality criteria is actually, it's those values that help us to give a radar to decide and to make good decisions. So in the end, actually very few people will give you an architecture as a template to tell you, hey, follow this. But in our community, people typically ask, like, what is your problem? What do you need to solve? Like, and how do you prioritize actually your quality criteria? So what is more important to you? And who are your stakeholders? So who actually enters that interplay of what is important? And that's how we actually drive the architectures. So Typically, we go with some patterns because that helps us to be more effective and to reach some architecture sooner. So we have our quality criteria and then architectural tactics and architectural patterns and reference architectures. But still, even if you take a reference architecture, which is a template basically for creating an architecture of your system, you cannot choose reference architecture until you know like why you are building the system, like what is its purpose and what kind of quality criteria you want to optimize. So until you know these things, you can very hardly like select a software architecture, like reference architecture that you could follow and get a reasonable result. Now, what makes architecting difficult? So why it makes sense to have a community on software architecture? It's actually a couple of things. So first of all, it is that digitalization meets critical infrastructures. Still some like 10 or 20 years ago, we were in our like safe cyberspace when we were developing software systems. But we are not, we got out of that like sandbox some years ago. So now our systems are actually having the physical elements. They are touching the physical world, and they are all interconnected together. So everything can be remote controlled. So you see on the slide a schema of a smart grid. So we heard about smart grid in a lightning talk before the break. And you see that it's a composition of systems, and you would like ideally want to be able to control these parts of the system remotely. And that actually brings challenges and risks associated with that, because when you just come to that area of critical infrastructures in healthcare, in transportation, in energy grids, you'll learn very soon that you can also like switch off energy supply of a household, and any ethical malicious individual could do so if they just use some vulnerability of your system. So what are other aspects of these challenges that we are facing nowadays is that in that big infrastructure, you also have untrusted elements. So it's not just that you could design everything yourself, you are using third parties elements. And I'm like in this slide, I'm getting some inspiration from Awais Rashid, who is working at Lancaster University and gives like very nice talks on cybersecurity and elements that are important in cybersecurity. And these are the elements that he was mentioning in one of his talks, like really beware of that untrusted design, untrusted devices that are in your infrastructure. Be aware that there are different endpoints to secure, actually different endpoints when an attacker can enter your system. There can be data inconsistency. There can be unreliable devices because some devices are just cheap and you want to connect them in the whole infrastructure. And most importantly, you are securing your system often against threats that are not known yet. So they are not yet existing, and yet when you're architecting those systems for like being in place for the next 10, 20 years, you need to be able to actually engineer in, so like architect in the support to be resilient against things that you do not know yet. And that's what we call engineering for the unknown. And that's the thing that actually makes architecting very interesting, very relevant, and very challenging. It's because we no longer engineer the systems for just problem avoidance. We need to anticipate intentional and unintentional problems on all levels. What that means is that some time ago, we were quite happy. So when we put all our effort in just preventing problems. And that's how we were functioning. And often many engineering companies and many software development companies are still working in this mindset. So let's prevent problems and then hope for the best. But that's not really the way we can go when you start, this digitalization starts meeting these critical infrastructures. Because the problem is that you can never just prevent everything from happening. And what we do nowadays is that we shall change the mindset actually. And that mindset should be that, like, what if we do not prevent everything? Do we have built-in mechanisms that recognize that some problem in the system just starts propagating through the system? Do we have mechanisms to recognize that there is an attacker in the system who is trying to open the doors for some more serious damage? And we need to pre-build mechanisms that are actually able to do this detection. Yet after that, we need to actually assume that we fail again, and the attacker just gets through the system without us being able to recognize it. Then, once we realize we need to be able to stop the attacker from propagating. Again, this is about pre-engineering. This is about architecting the system right to be able to stop the attacker from propagating through the system. And even there, we need to be ready that we are not totally successful, and some attackers just break something that is significant. And then we need to ensure safety under attack. So we need to make sure that even if the system is down, then the safety and the interconnected devices are touching the physical system are safe. Ultimately, we also need to pre-engineer and architect in the mechanisms to recover from an attack or failure. And ultimately, in the end, then be ready for forensics after the attack or failure. And these are actually very interesting research problems that are perceived also by the software engineering community as something new, because there are so many unexplored questions in that. So to give you just some examples, this is one example where the things went wrong, actually. This is an example from 2015. You can look it up. There is a link on the bottom of the slide, and you can have the slides available after the talk. It's about an attack on a power grid in Ukraine in 2015. Actually, everything went wrong. So they only learned about attacker being in the system after the operators of the power grid saw their cursor just moving and switching off the power stations and changing their password so that they couldn't log in. What was problematic about that is that not only they were not able to stop the attacker, needed to watch their screen switching off 230,000 people out from electricity, but it was very difficult to recover from that attack. It took 2 months to completely recover, because what the attacker did is they actually did the attack for continuously for 6 months to prepare, open the doors for the attack. So they were in the end able to even erase firmware on the end devices. For the next 2 months, everything needed to be switched on manually. And it took 2 months to just put everything back to functioning. And it's actually we can see this in many types of systems that are really touching this physical world. Now, I just wanted to give you these examples of research questions. So these are, for example, some examples from my team. I have one PhD student who is working on forensic ready software systems, and that's a very interesting topic, because you actually need to, right from the beginning, when you are designing the system, you should be designing the system so that if some attack or some major problem happens, you are able to collect digital evidence that will be admissible at court to prove what actually happened, who did it, why this happened, what was the vulnerability in the system, and be able to use it also in the legal process against the attacker. This is something that we do not have handled at the moment. So now when a serious attack happens, we are trying to collect some evidence, but even if we collect something, we don't know if the evidence has been tampered with and somebody changed the evidence, or it is really an evidence we can use. Sometimes the evidence is being deleted from the system, so logs are being deleted, etc. So we have nothing in hands to actually find out who did that and how did they get to the system. It's just like we are trying to somehow guess, but we do not have a way to prove it. So this forensic ready software systems is about pre-designing the mechanisms in the system since the beginning, so that this digital evidence can be collected. I have another PhD student working on this topic, the detection of insider attackers in organizations. Again, very interesting topic, where we know a lot about how to secure the outside of the system so that people do not get in. But once they are in, because they are our employees, and they know employees who have higher rights that they have, how do we recognize that there is 6 month long attack ongoing by just harvesting some credentials, opening some small doors here and there, so that after 6 months something serious happens? This is very difficult actually, and there are different techniques of like social engineering, how people are like tricked or their password is stolen, so that it is very difficult actually to recognize there's like insider attackers in organizations. And again, in the system, to be able to detect them, you need to pre-engineer mechanisms that will help you to do that. You must not just rely on some logs that somebody is randomly collecting. So you need to pre-design these things. And these are exactly the things we were talking about when describing software architectures. So architectures are about this like fundamental decisions you need to do early, these fundamental decisions that help you to then build upon. And these are part of it, even if you do not clearly see like, where is that structure? Where are the modules, right? So even then, it is architectural work, and it's about architecting systems. What you see, and we are getting slowly to that second part of the talk about more like towards education, is that extensive mindset stretch is necessary. If we want to do this effectively, we need to start thinking about the systems differently. And we need to actually involve really diverse thinking individuals to like help us to get into that understanding that our vision is very narrow, and there is a lot of details we are missing. One more example from the research I'm doing. So this one I'm doing with Emilia from the Fraunhofer ISF from Germany. And what we are doing there is that we are studying trust in digital autonomous ecosystems. Also, like a very interesting topic when you just imagine to get to time travel to the future. And you can imagine autonomous driving vehicles meeting each other at a crossroad. Then they need to actually have a way to decide whether they trust in each other or they do not. These vehicles, if they should be autonomous, they need to be able to actually judge who they can trust and who they cannot. And these aspects, like how they can decide, how they build trust. Can we use the same mechanisms as we use in psychology, where we build trust based on reputation, where we actually observe situations and build reputation? We can then inherit actually reputation from those we believe or we trust. So these concepts we know from psychology, can they be adopted in the way that trust is built among the digital agents? These things actually start to be like very complex, and we find out that with the technological perspective only, we are not able to just solve them in a good way. So we need to have people who are really like methodologically strong, who are strong in legal aspects, in psychology, sociology, in environmental law, economical aspects, to actually get a solution to these kinds of problems. And that actually brings us to that thing of like, what shall be the competencies of a software architect? And that's the core of the talk, all right? So what do we expect a software architect to be capable of? And although many people in companies would tell you, hey, like the person should be strong in frameworks, so knowing many frameworks, they should be really good in coding, they should know databases really well and be able to work with cloud. Like if you look at it from that like helicopter view of what is really essential, if you understand what software architecture is, then it's actually the ability to understand, to envision, to trade off, and to strategize. It's not about the depth of the knowledge, but it's about the breadth of the knowledge. It's about the communication, to bring people to one table to understand what they are saying and to actually be able to lead them towards a decision. And it's about that like ability to make a decision. And also importantly, it's about the awareness and prevention of cognitive biases, because we have these biases and we need to be aware of them. So ultimately, actually, the software architecture is that shared understanding of your experts. So the more diverse experts you have, the stronger the architecture is going to be. And that's what just takes us to that point. Do we have the right people in software architecture? Can we do something about improving that skill set that we have at the moment? And I'm with that, like switching the theme of the presentation with this like Chiquitas logo in the top corner. And I will try to share with you some insights and some experience I have from the project we have started in 2014. Let's take a look first at this like starting point. So where would you guess that software architect experts in companies nowadays would just place as dots on this graph? So when you look at that and you see that the scale goes from targeted individuals who are like going more in breadth of the knowledge, who are like expert on something, yeah, and more like targeted towards like seeing a solution, in comparison to more perspective-oriented individuals who are more like looking in the breadth of the solutions, who are more multidisciplinary, who are like able to like stay on the surface but understand like big perspective of that surface. Then I would say actually we would love the people to be here on the perspective side. But what happens nowadays in companies is that we rather see them on the target side. And why is that happening? It's happening because they need to get there through an education pipeline. And that education pipeline actually started with cutting off those perspective-oriented individuals. And we will just get to that, like how that happened and how we can prevent this from happening. Because when you look at the education pipeline, it naturally starts with small children and coding classes at school. But the coding class is really like targeted task, right? You really need to get deep into it, and you need to be able to have this kind of like try and debug and don't give up and just go without asking, why am I doing that? Right? Once you start questioning it, like, why am I doing it? What can I use it for? Can I use just existing system? Why should I code this thing? Like when it's like I can just install something on my phone which is existing. Then you actually start to be demotivated to continue with that coding style of education we are having at schools. Right, so those people who just stick to that coding and are happy in that coding class, just focusing on their code and nothing but that, are typically those like target-oriented individuals, because they find it challenging, right? It doesn't work. You need to trial and error, and you need to actually make it work in the end. So it's actually quite engaging for this like target-oriented individuals, but it's a little it's a little discouraging for this more like perspective-oriented individuals who rather wants to see like multidisciplinary and purpose, etc. So that's why even if like then from software developers to software architects, we might do a little towards perspective shift, it's not enough if we start a pipeline with cutting off those perspective-oriented people who we in the end need in software architecture. There comes one more element to it, and that's how Chiquitas is coming to the picture, and that is that we observe that many girls actually tend to be on that perspective side of the spectrum. Although let's not stereotype. We need to like understand that we all are spread across the whole spectrum. So there are individuals of both genders who are strongly target-driven or strongly perspective-driven. But what we can see is that like many girls, and that's like the right part of the graph, actually towards the perspective, and there are some like reasons for it that can be also tracked back to neuroscience and the way we have the hemisphere connected, so that it's just easier to make connections and to be like multitasking and connecting things together. So that's something that we see in Chiquitas that the girls are really strong in. But unfortunately, like what you see here is those light blue delimiters where I guess just illustration, right? It's not like, don't take it as a precise drawing, but just for illustration, like the place where we now like have those experts from which we can select software architects, we are missing out strongly by just leaving out many girls and other perspective-oriented individuals early in the process, in the education process. So what's worth actually saying is that this diversity iceberg, I might be saying like girls, boys, but let's just realize that what we care about ultimately is this diversity of skills, of perspectives, of beliefs, of talents, etc. But these actually are a like kind of thing that if we do not see gender balance in a certain field, then probably we are lacking these fundamental differences as well. So actually seeing gender imbalance is showing that there might be some like more deep-rooted imbalance also on this low level. Although it would be perfect not to care about these characteristics and only care about these, it's how we can actually get some symptoms of something being imbalanced in the core of the thing. How we are leaving those perspective-oriented individuals out. So one thing is that they have different approach to problem solving. So these target-oriented individuals, when they are presented with a big complex problem, what they typically do is that they want some results first. So at least partial results, but have soon some results. So what they do is that they fragment the complexity of the problem into some sub-problems that are easier to solve. So that's how they actually can get to a solution earlier, to have sub-problems and go one by one and solve it. While the perspective-oriented individuals, what they have tendency to do is to first create an understanding of all the factors that influence the solution. And these factors actually not going just into all these like quality criteria, etc. They also go to the past experience and predicting the future aspects. So the complexity actually at the beginning is quite large, especially in computing, where computing is complex like crazy itself already. So what happens then is that those perspective-oriented individuals actually are stuck at the beginning because they need to understand the map. They need to create that map of the problem. They need to understand the factors. And by that, they actually on this, like this is this like illustration of a learning curve, they appear to be stuck for quite some time, right? They need to like get some understanding. And often they actually also start to feel quite anxious because they see their other like kids in the classroom who are already like delivering solutions, right? While they are still like stuck on not really moving anywhere. So what happens is that if this happens in a classroom and the teacher is not aware of these differences of the mindsets and the ways that children approach different problems being presented, then even the teacher can actually predict that this kid is just weaker in computing, right? Because what they think is that they project this kind of curve. So they project it here and see curve like really not getting anywhere from here. And the kid is discouraged as well because the kid does not see any role models who would go through this learning curve and can very hardly relate to believing that they might ever reach this point of leveling up with those stronger in the classroom. So then like one more thing that happens is that these perspective-oriented kids are those who are more multidisciplinary and by nature they have more interest. So it's not just computing, and we run studies with girls and we find out that when they are little they actually have so many interests. So they want to go in like arts and languages and history and biology and computing and math. So they like all those disciplines. So when they feel that they are weak in computing, they just switch. They just switch to biology or history because there it's more easy for them and predictable for them to understand what to learn and what to do to get good grades and feel accomplishing something. While in computing, it's more difficult for them, and when they perceive themselves as weaker, they are just like drop out themselves. And then there are also some social aspects specific to girls and boys that we often like socialize girls for perfection and boys for bravery, which makes it more difficult for girls to start with this coding, which is just going trial and error, and you need certain bravery to actually get over it. So one thing why this is important is because of the teachers. The teachers often do this like mistake, which is that the dark side of biases is that we tend to judge people's potential based on how their talent spectrum matches the talent spectrum of the already successful ones. And that's very important. So by having imbalanced talent spectrum in computing and having mostly like target-oriented individuals, then the teachers, if they see that the kid is more like perspective-oriented, they predict that the potential of this kid to be successful in computing will not be large, will not be high. So what can we do about it? I have a couple of points and studies, and I want to also tell you something about Chiquitas, about this organization that we are running. This perspective-friendly computer science education and classroom design would benefit all perspective-oriented individuals who we want in computing, not only girls, but obviously in Chiquitas we are working with girls a lot. So there are different elements, and I do not want to go through the details because I would like to tell you something about Chiquitas, which is why I put some references to the papers you can look into and where you can learn about it, learn more about it. So these are the strategies that combat the wrong stereotypes, so that also the self-efficacy and self-confidence about the potential of themselves to just be successful in computing are just changing. When we look at one of them, for example, a strategy to make learning environment less hostile, then we've written a separate paper on that, where we called girl-friendly computer science classroom Chiquitas experience report, and there we report what kind of strategies can be effective, and we do. And we're actually working on a continuation of this paper with Alexander, who I see also in the audience. So some elements to it. So it's about creating safe environment, a sense of belonging, and giving opportunities for feeling successful. Because these slower learners, or those learners on the beginning of on this lower learning curve, feel quite frustrated, especially if they have all A's in other subjects, and now they feel that they are just not moving anywhere. So they actually need to get some opportunities to be surrounded by peers who also maybe struggle, and they can kind of encourage each other and feeling more successful in the environment where they learn together from the start. There are some strategies to actually separate these people in some groups, but then also actually merging them together with the more experienced learners once the learning curve starts to progress. So it should not be a separated environment forever. It should be meant as an incubator to actually help them start. It actually also helps to invest some effort in personalized learning. So really understanding that somebody is struggling in the classroom, because that often happens, especially with girls that we work with in Chiquitas, is that they are used to have good grades in other subjects, so they do not really want to admit that they are having problems, which is why they are silent about the problems they are having in the coding classrooms. And by that, they actually completely lose track of what is happening in the classroom, because they cannot follow anymore if they just get stuck and do not report it to anybody. So how can we actually help with personalized learning? How can we understand that somebody is struggling? How can we create safe environment for getting personalized feedback? And also understand that the person is strong, just in different way. And that's about fundamentally changing and rebuilding the curriculum, which should not be really compartmentalized computer science focused only, but maybe merging some kind of multidisciplinary in the computer science classroom, so that kids that are strong in other disciplines can feel a little safer, but by having understanding in these other building blocks that build this computer science education in the end. So that brings us to that story of Chiquitas, and to just describe why I talk about the girls, I just showed this graph that in Czech Republic, we are on the very last position within Europe in representation of girl and women in ICT. So it's 10% only, which is why this initiative is very popular in the Czech Republic at the moment, because people agree that something like this is needed. So we started in Chiquitas in 2014 with the idea to popularize, so make IT more popular and give access to IT to girls and to women. It was basically our friends who we were teaching coding at the beginning, but soon we extended it to children and also teachers, and working with them to help with activities which are really engaging, and they are helping novice learners. So those who actually believe that it's too start for them to learn, too learn for them to start learning. So we are working with those, creating safe environment in which we just guide them, we just help them, and see wonderful and enormous progress after some time. We actually seen that people really love this initiative. So in the Czech Republic, it's really popular. So they started coming to us and saying, what about if you just do something with our company? Let's develop a program where we can provide some mentors, and you can teach these participants data science or web development or security. And we can actually help them to get to interviews in companies and even like help them to change their career. And we did this, and it's very successful. So we built a community of 100 companies supporting these activities at the moment. We also learn a lot about what are the barriers that girls and women feel, why we do not have more of them in computing. And these are actually going, they are quite surprising to us, because when it comes to like access, they speak about access to encouragement. So as little girls, they see their brothers being encouraged to go into computing, while they are just left aside when this encouragement is going on. With the stereotypes, it's not really about their own stereotypes, but the stereotypes that their family or friends are having about computing. So they are saying that actually things like, my mom discouraged me because she wants me to be happy, and she doesn't think that I will be happy if I go into computing. It's about confidence and self-efficacy, and then like if they go through all that and they just end up like studying computing, they start to suffer from missing the sense of belonging and missing mentors who they can relate to. And in the end, even if they become successful and get a career in computing, many of them don't feel valued. They feel like they need to prove they belong, they need to prove they are good enough. So it's this kind of perception that some of them feel that they are not welcome, even if the environment is trying to be welcoming. So we work with that and actually creating environment which is more like community driven and helping people to like learn from each other. So what we do is actually that we do not have professional lecturers who we would hire to teach, but we gather a community of tech professionals who are volunteering to teach. And it's 600 tech professionals who just come and teach with us. So whenever we have a course, it's typically Saturday, Sunday, or in the evening. They just come after work and they just help with teaching. And it's typically like 5 or 6 teachers in one classroom, because they just, you know, like assist anybody who is feeling lost, which helps us with that personalized learning and more like peer-to-peer learning, very informal atmosphere, just getting to know each other and helping each other to learn. And also those who actually graduate from the courses often come back and help with teaching. So that makes the community even like more strongly connected. Our mission is to inspire and empower new talents for stronger diversity and competitiveness in tech. We do not have like women in the mission. We speak about new talents. At the moment, we focus on girls and women mostly because we see such a huge gap in that perspective. But our mission is to help all talents, especially the diverse talents. And the format of events is like very wide. So it's from one-day workshops, long-term courses, like 3 months, to really upskilling academies, like 300 teaching hours within 3 months. It's different hackathons, coding clubs, and many activities for children, like summer camps, summer schools, programs for families, working with parents, working with teachers, with school headmasters. We also have many career changers. So after the programs, we typically have companies involved in the programs. So these companies give mentors and provide some teaching as well. So in the end, around like 60% of the graduates of the courses get a job offer in the companies. So we help adult women in the Czech Republic to change their career, especially when they are on maternity leave and they just want to re-examine what they want to do in their life. They often come to us and change their career during maternity leave. From some numbers, so it's at the moment 25,000 members in the community, 25,000 graduates from courses, and each course is like 30 people, one course. So it's hundreds of courses every year. Last year it was 15,000 students. We have teams at 8 cities in the Czech Republic. We actually have full-time employed 60 people who work on that, on organizing the courses, because it's huge at the moment. We have activities for like adults who are mainly women, but then teachers, public, companies, parents, children, and the topics, it's actually many topics. It's like 100 courses in the portfolio. They go from also different awards from for bachelor students, but then as you see, it's about website development, it's about digital competencies, data science, security, testing, etc. So there are actually many in the portfolio, and we also receive many awards for the activities we are doing. These are the cities where we are in the Czech Republic. This is the city where I am, so you can remember it. It's Brno, and this is the city where also my university is located. We have, like Czechitas has headmasters, or like this headquarters in Brno and Prague. So we have headquarters in these two cities. But in Brno, we have larger community center, which is a facility of like 1,500 square meters with many lecture rooms and cafe and a community space where people can just get and learn from each other and share. If you wanted to join us, we would be very happy if you join in some way. I think the easy way to join us is through the Women Courage Conference, which will be happening virtually or hybrid in Prague plus virtually in September 2021. So if you just put it in Google, ACM Women Courage 2021, you can join us at that conference. It's an annual ACM conference, celebration of women in computing. And the theme of the conference is bridging communities to foster innovation. So we would like to celebrate bridges built across communities. It's totally in link with what is very dear to my heart. I'm the general co-chair of the conference, and we'll be very happy to see you, both male, female, to see your students. And even if you have some recommendations for supporters and sponsors, we'll be very happy. And then UGAIN Cost Action that is just starting, but you can soon find the website of UGAIN as an activity trying to cross-fertilize the knowledge of people from 37 European countries to learn from each other about effective strategies to help girls to just enter universities and then through the ladder get to even to professorships. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you very much. Fascinating.